welcome back to the Dorm Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and today I'm joined by my lovely duo of co-hosts, Alex.
I'm in.
Glad to see your Cyclops from the X-Men movie now. And Brett.
Hello.
Welcome to the party, boys. Okay. So, big news of the week. Elden Ring's out. It's really good. Because of that, we're going to talk about open world design. There you go. You're caught up. It's episode 101.
Yay.
Smoothest intro we've ever done.
The wonderful episode 101.
I should have called it that. You gotta make these jokes before we start, Alex. So, sometimes we like to start with a game on this show. And today's game is a little sad, because Babylon's Fall came out. Now, I would like to ask you, specifically Alex, although Brett, I don't know if you've heard this number, so you may be...
I have.
Okay, so you're excluded. Alex specifically.
It's a one-person game. Oh no.
Give me your best guess for the current in-game number of players. This is like a couple days after launch, or like a day after launch at the most. I think it launched yesterday. Of Babylon's Fall on Steam. What's the current player number in-game, in Steam's in-game counter? And then you can also tell me the 24-hour peak amount of players on launch day.
Oh. The most I know about it, I've seen a couple of ads
for
for
comparison, let me find the number of people currently playing Elden Ring, just so you have a starting point of a game that came out recently.
That's just not fair.
Just know
right?
This is going to be way bigger than usual, most likely. Okay, currently playing Elden Ring, 655,000.
Good.
Oh my god.
That's a big number.
Yeah, holy crap.
That's bigger than I expected it to be honest.
Yeah.
That's 1.2k?
1.2k. Man, that's a low number, Alex. That is a low number for most
It's
games.
higher than Battlefield, too.
For most
still not
games,
low enough.
It is not low enough for Babylon's Fall.
Oh.
Babylon's Fall is currently sitting at 513 players.
That was going to be my second guess, somewhere in the 500 range. Crap.
Can you tell me what the 24-hour peak on the launch day was on Steam?
Was it 700?
Alex, you are right about on the money.
Wow.
It peaked at fewer than 650 concurrent players.
Oh.
This makes me sad because Babylon's Fall is Platinum, and Platinum does very good at what they make. I did, after beating Elden Ring, boot up the Babylon's Fall demo on PlayStation 5, and unfortunately, I can see why people are not buying this game. It was actively very hard to look at, despite the gameplay being quite good because it's Platinum. They have this like weird painterly filter over everything, except it's not like the art was made with that in mind, from what I gather. It's like they've applied this weird effect to the entire screen. So there's like a paintbrush splotch on your screen that you see in the same place the entire game.
Weird.
Oh, so it's like you're looking through frosted glass.
Yeah,
kind of.
it's like a film grain filter or something they've put over it. It's got like a couple variations of paint splotches, and it just looks really bad. Not to mention, I was playing the native PS5 demo, terrible resolution on the UI. The UI was like sub 1080p, if that.
Weird.
Because it was very fuzzy. It just everything looked very off. And the game was fun for a little while until I had the realization that this is a games as a service game. And that's not going to keep going for very long.
It's $60 too, isn't it?
Yep, $60, full price. To me, this screams Godfall 2 in every possible
Yeah,
way.
it does
favorite.
it has that aesthetic to it.
And having played both, Babylon's Fall, infinitely better combat. Definitely way better. It's Platinum. Of course, the combat's good. Enemies are not so good. Not very interesting. The art style is atrocious. It's just, it doesn't look good.
Everything seems just very either crowded or jagged, and that's the main art style for everything.
It's very like, you can tell they kind of wanted to have that Roman Babylon art style inspiration of like looking at an old Roman city. Except
then
the game is
literally
like
do
weirdly
that.
Colored. A
Don't
dude like
go
opens up a
half on it.
TAC in the opening cutscene and like presses a button on a TAC, but he's in like a full knight uniform. It just looks weird. Yeah, there's a lot of things with this game that I can recommend trying the demo if you're interested, but I would not recommend $60 for Babylon's Fall. I don't think it's going to be at $60 for very long. So, in fact, I would wager a bet if Square Enix wants to get some money from this game, it's going to go down maybe to free-to-play relatively soon. Just because it is really, really weird to have made the decision for this to be a $60 release right after Elden Ring. So, yeah. I think they sent this game out to die, which might be a little unfortunate, but it is certainly not seeing a lot of success.
They gave it the Treasure Planet treatment.
Yep. Now, Square Enix released 2 other games very recently.
Yes.
As well. Chocobo GP. I believe it either just came out or is just about to come out. I haven't checked.
I think it's coming out. I have a couple people that, like, if it's out already and they didn't tell me, I would be worried about them. So I hope that it's not out yet.
Chocobo GP releases on the 10th, so it's about a little under a week away. Not out yet. Weird decision to have this Babylon's Fall just released, which was published by Square Enix. Chocobo GP is coming out, and then 5 days after Chocobo GP is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the intent was here, but it is a weird set of weeks for Square Enix where they're releasing their own games back to back to back.
And then just a little over a week ago, the Final Fantasy VI Pixel remaster came out also. So that's like 4 or 5 games just shotgun blast right at you in a span of like 3 weeks.
I really, really think there is a significant degree of overlap between fans of Square Enix games and fans of Elden Ring and from soft games. Yeah. Like Brett and I both are. They appeal to us. Not everyone is going to be shared. I think Final Fantasy is going to have a much wider audience, although Elden Ring sales numbers might be proving me wrong on that at this moment, because I think it's already sold 5 million copies on Steam alone. So, which, for reference, Dark Souls 3 sold about, I think, 450,000 in the first 4 days. Elden Ring sold like 4 million. So, the number of copies there is a very large difference. FromSoft seeing big success, which is great, but yeah, it's weird that Square Enix is sending these games out right after Elden Ring. This is the kind of thing where I really think delay Babylon's Fall like a month just for the sole reason of it not launching near Elden Ring.
Yeah. Ryan. For the sole reason?
Yep. And then we have Stranger of Paradise coming out next week, a little over a week away from now. Is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which is a game I'm very much looking forward to, but I'm not over Elden Ring yet. I've beat the game. I'm not done playing it.
We gotta kill Chaos, guys.
Yeah, not until I kill all the bosses in Elden Ring multiple times.
Yeah, like 5 times.
Oh my god.
It's so
gotta get those different endings. You gotta find everything.
Yeah. I don't know. This is it's an interesting thing where it really feels like I don't know if Stranger of Paradise might be fine because March 15th is far enough out that I think hardcore Souls players will have beaten Elden Ring and might be willing to move on. But anyone that's like a casual player of these games, not going to be done with Elden Ring. It's a very long game. And I really think if you're looking at your choice being Elden Ring and Stranger of Paradise, most people are probably going to pick Elden Ring. So this is just a weird situation. I think it's the kind of thing where I remember a bunch of games last year moving because of Cyberpunk's release. A whole lot of games, including like games that were not at all related to Cyberpunk. There's a bunch of free-to-play games that delayed expansion launches because Cyberpunk was coming out, stuff like that. So it's odd to me that Elden Ring did not have the same effect, especially because it seems to share a much more of its audience with those games.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Other bit of news. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. They were announced. First trailers, I would say, look better than expected.
They look better than Arceus.
Yeah, they look very Legends Arceus. but with a better frame rate from what I could see, which makes sense. Yeah, this to me is weird just because of timing wise. Like Legends Arceus came out what 2.5 months ago, 3 months. It's not been a long amount of time, and this seems like it's releasing very quickly afterwards. I don't think we have a specific release date yet, but it's this year, so seems very fast after release that we're getting this. Legends Arceus also just got an update, so I don't know. It's just an interesting decision. I got a lot of problems with Pokemon, but Legends Arceus was a good game, and I'm really hoping Scarlet and Violet follow suit. So it kind of feels.
If you're wondering if Scarlet and Violet are going to do the same thing as Arceus, it's back to the mainline formula for those.
They have confirmed it is like fully open this time. They're structuring it similarly to Legends Arceus, where the areas are very open. So that to me is a good sign. I hope they keep more of the things from Arceus, like throwing the Pokeball at things, and more of the active gameplay.
Yeah, it's weird because I know a lot of people that really like Arceus, especially after like the overwhelming majority of people seem to be like, this looks like it's going to be just the hot can of garbage, and then it came out and it was actually really good. It's weird to see Game Freak just not like, even if you already had Scarlet and Violet like in development or whatever, it's like it's widely known that you should just like give a Pokemon game more time so that it doesn't release in a terrible state with like nothing good in it.
Yeah.
So I would think the smarter decision was just be like, okay, let's not even talk about this yet and just double down on Arceus for a little bit.
To me, because
a lot of people are like, I've finished the Pokédex, I've beaten Arceus. I want more of game because game is fun and it's just I've done all the things and I want more. Where's the expansion? And I don't. With this coming out this year, it almost feels like Legends Arceus might not even be like getting one, which is really weird.
Super weird.
Yeah,
like it's wasted potential. I really think this should have been the case where they, even if they're going to still release it this year, wait until the games are like 3 months out, then do like a big blowout. Because it's Pokemon, right? These games are going to sell no matter what. You don't need a lot of advertising power behind them for people to buy them. You just need people to know that they exist. And to me, giving more time for Legends Arceus to breathe would have helped with that. Especially because we had 2 Pokemon games very recently, Legends Arceus and Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. So it's a strange situation all around. They're having the same issue of releasing games back to back that other studios have had before, and it never really works out well.
I have not heard anything about Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl.
Yeah, because Legends Arceus came out like a month later and was better.
Well, except for the fact that they just cut like the entire post game content and more from it.
Yeah, it's a weird.
It's not the platinum version.
Yeah,
I still had the Battle Frontier in Diamond. That's not an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird to me that they chose to remake the inferior games instead of just doing a platinum remake. I don't know.
They got to sell the 2 individual versions so people can buy both at the same time, right?
But then they did Legends Arceus, which didn't do that and was great for it. So many confusing choices by Pokemon Company. Yeah, it's very strange. All right. GMG's union officially went on strike. This is the group behind Kotaku, as well as all of Kotaku's sister websites, asking people to not click or contribute to content for these websites. It's an interesting
what
little...
websites? Is there a list? Is it just Kotaku?
It's a Kotaku, Lifehacker, Gizmodo, a couple of websites that are not in English. They used to have a sports website that I don't think is still active anymore. But yeah, they have a lot of things that have been put out. They're insisting on no mean tweets about working conditions. Is one of the things that was put into this the group of websites demands for its employees. So they were basically told to not speak out on Twitter about being treated poorly.
Yeah, no.
That raises I don't know, but that raises some red flags.
Yeah, if there wasn't a problem, you wouldn't have to say that.
They have been removing guarantees that healthcare will be provided. They're removing they're lowballing salaries, a bunch of other stuff that is really, really shady dealings. It's just, again, treat your employees well. It's not that hard.
It's really not. Yeah.
It's not just a game industry problem. It's a game news industry problem. Oh no.
I mean, it's almost more of a problem in the gaming news industry because there's been just as many, if not more, exposés, but games news groups. Most of them are now defunct because they die a lot faster than game studios do.
The last one I remember was like Rock Paper Shotgun or something like that. Did something go on with them? Is that worth getting into at this point?
I don't think it was as bad as this, from what I recall.
Because they're still around, aren't they?
Yeah, Rock Paper Shotgun still running. Very interesting. Microsoft, Square Enix, a whole bunch of other studios. I believe Steam is on the list for this as well. Electronic Arts, all suspending sales and service in Russia as of last 24 hours, pretty much. CD Projekt Red's in here, so GOG is off the board. It's an interesting response. I think it's probably the only thing a lot of these developers can actually do to combat the situation. So I applaud them for taking the choice to do this. I do think there's going to be a lot of disappointed people because as many news in more reputable areas than we will tell you about this, as the Russian citizens are not the people at fault here, but
yeah, there's people protesting the war in Russia.
I mean, most people are. There's been stories in Ukraine about groups of Russian soldiers just not doing what they're supposed to do and like getting rid of their fuel. It's just a bad situation all around. It's a really rough deal for everyone, especially Ukrainian citizens. So we're hoping everything resolves with the situation and it doesn't escalate further, which unfortunately it looks like it will. So,
oh, it always does.
Yep. Speaking of Ukraine, World of Tanks had to fire its creative director.
Oh.
Because this man voiced support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Get him out. There's no place for that. That's
what is
so
with
weird.
Game developers and politics?
I don't understand.
I feel like if you hold political opinions that you think might even be slightly controversial, just don't mention them on your public platform, right? Just don't do it. Resolves the situation. All right. It's just very disappointing to see this. We've gotten confirmation that Resident Evil 2, 3, and 7 are going to be coming to current gen consoles with visual enhancements. Exciting to see.
Nice.
Especially because I haven't had the chance to play 7. I would love to. All right.
Yeah, those games already look really good, so.
Unless anyone else has news that we need to get to, it's time to move on to our main topic of the show. We're going to talk about open worlds.
I would like to restate the thing that I said before we started, that Battlefield 2042 now has less than 2042 players playing it right now. And we can now start the main topic of the episode.
Great.
It's Brett's hell, but Brett's here.
Yes. And
I will
it's not hell anymore.
To say there was like a big article that the Battlefield DICE developers put out stating that they are aware of the issues with map design, except all of these things that they're talking about were things that were feedback in the open beta.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did they get it by snail mail?
I don't know. They're going to like the 343 school of delayed response to everything right now.
It's not a good school.
It's a bad place to be.
Yep.
Yeah, Halo Infinite is also having a bunch of content drought issues right now where they were like, oh, this is going to be the live service Halo game, except there's been no new maps or even returning maps or modes since.
And then,
it
launched. It's the new season, right? No, it's not. It's not the new season.
That's just a glitch.
Yeah, the new season was delayed. A whole bunch of weird stuff is going on with Halo Infinite. Yeah. All right. Kirby has a demo now. Go play it. It's very good. That's pretty much it.
Mouthful mode.
Mouthful mode is a good demo. And do want to confirm, because I've seen a lot of confusion about the new Kirby game. A lot of people think it's open world. Not open world. It is level based. Nope. Much more apt comparison is Mario 3D Land to 3D World. Still great, amazing games. So very hopeful that the full game is as good as the demo is, because it's very fun. All right. Let's talk about open worlds. Whoa. Namely, as of right now, Wyatt is normally our Ubisoft open world person who likes, if not likes, at least understands that type of
Tolerates.
design.
Do I have to play the devil's advocate?
You might have to play the devil's advocate.
Oh, no.
I'll try a little bit
Oh,
myself,
boy.
but because we're missing him this week, this is going to be a little bit of a stilted conversation. I want to put this out here. At least Brett and I are both very biased against a lot of open world design.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot of discussion here that you may not agree with, and that's totally fine. You're allowed to disagree with it.
It is also worth pointing out that this isn't the first time we've talked about something like this before. We definitely have at least like one or two episodes in the past that like we focus on. I think literally the Brett's Hell episode where I wasn't here.
Yeah, we talked about Ubisoft Open World.
Ubisoft Open World.
So we've talked about that before. Now we're going to focus a little bit more about open worlds that we think are a bit more successful and that use things like environmental storytelling, level design, the things that games like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, and to a degree Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West have been applauded for. Red Dead, same thing, where you have these kind of maps
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, absolutely. That kind of flow into the different sections, direct you very well to different areas, all without the need of 1,000 icons in a compass pointing you in every direction.
I was about to say maybe some Elder Scrolls talk in there, but I still that statement still stands because Morrowind, even though that's back from 2002.
I actually, having played a lot of Skyrim recently, I think that is one of the few types of games that actually benefits from having a map with icons.
Oh.
And it's and whereas it's Skyrim and maybe Oblivion that need it, but Morrowind absolutely didn't.
Morrowind knew it didn't need it, but
we can go into that discussion as well, maybe.
You know, we'll start with that discussion because Elden Ring is going to fill up most of the podcast when we begin to talk about it. So I'm going to delay the Elden Ring talk for a little while so we can at least talk about a couple other games first. I think, namely, the ones I want to hit first is Elder Scrolls. It's a good thing to talk about. Then I want to go on to Ghost of Tsushima a little bit because I think Ghost of Tsushima does have a relatively Ubisoft-style open world that I think we both like, right, Brett?
Very much.
I need to play Ghost of Tsushima.
You do, Alex. You really
do. I really do.
Maybe.
Oh god, maybe I'll get that instead of Elden Ring because I said
that might be better fit.
Elden Ring. I'm not gonna get Elden Ring until I finish Hollow Knight, and then it's still a maybe. But
yeah, that's understandable.
I could go for some samurai action right about now.
So, Alex, you were talking about Morrowind, and Morrowind does not have the insane amount of compass direction and quest log tracking that both Oblivion and Skyrim do, which for Morrowind works very well. You have this excellent sense of exploration, a really, really good, like, the sense of freedom that Morrowind has still exceeds most of the other later Elder Scrolls games because of that, right?
It's in so many aspects because of that too. You have just the I guess smaller kind of open world because it's just on Vardenfell.
Small,
but
very
with
dense.
the slower walking speed, stuff like that. Yeah, very dense. None of the caves you encounter even have like map markers or map locations on them too. There's so many things that are just okay. Try to find this again. I dare you. Almost. And it's really fun to just stumble on those things again. And I think it also the freedom aspect of it. It really helps that that's been the Elder Scrolls game with levitation in it, where you can fly. And then it was outlawed in the other games because their design just wouldn't allow it because they designed them fundamentally differently.
You can have too much freedom in an open world, for sure. Yeah, I think that stands really well for Morrowind. Moving on to Oblivion and Skyrim, I think the main issue that prevents you from having this open structure without map markers and without the need for a constant populated compass is the amount of things that you're often doing at one time. It's overwhelming if you don't have an ability to track them, because that's something you notice when playing Elden Ring. To bring us in a little bit to the Elden Ring bit. If Elden Ring had more going on with quest lines than it does, it would become a lot harder to track what's going on. Where it sits at right now, I think, is a very good level of, okay, you probably will want to write some of this down somewhere, but you don't need a quest log because things aren't that complicated. You're mostly going to stumble across the continuation of quest lines. You're not going to intentionally find a lot of them. Whereas with
do you have like? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Whereas with Oblivion and Skyrim, you're guided along because you kind of have to be. Otherwise, there is no way you'll remember the 10 different quests you picked up in Whiterun at the same time that take you to 10
With
different corners of the world.
yeah, I think with Oblivion and Skyrim versus Morrowind too, again, and also probably Elden Ring is Morrowind has I've not playing Elden Ring, seeing what you guys have played of it, and having the lore, watching the lore videos for it. I feel like it has the same air to Elden Ring, where there's the general story where you know what you're supposed to do at the very end. You can get there however you want.
Yeah.
For Morrowind, with Skyrim and Oblivion, it's okay. These quest steps are very rigidly lined out for you. This is how you can do that. There might be a couple of ways you can do one or two of them, but it's a linear story in an open world.
Definitely. I agree with that. I wonder what Skyrim would be like if the main quest was just kill Alduin and you didn't have any other steps there. You just had,
I think
you
it would
could go talk to different people and get help.
I think it would be a lot better. I would never talk to the Blades if that was an option.
There's a separate issue with that.
They tried to kill my homie Alduin.
Wait,
no, Parthenax. Oh my god. No. Just kidding. I want the world to end. Suck it up, big boy.
I do wonder. I wonder what a Bethesda game in modern era would look like with that design. It'd be very different. Having played a lot of Skyrim recently, there's just so much going on that without map markers, I would be utterly lost as to a lot of things happening, especially without like quest directions.
In Elden Ring, as far as like multiple quests go, do you have like 2 or 3 at most going on at the same time? Story threads that could
you can have like 10-ish, I would say, but most of them are passive. They're not things you have to actively do, aside from like 2 or 3.
And the fact that they don't have a log, it's just kind of like treated with that attitude where it's like, oh, well, I mean, if you missed it, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Really, yeah.
You might not fully understand like a specific thing that happened, but that not going to affect your enjoyment. It probably won't affect your ending unless you're going for like a secret ending. So, yeah.
Because a lot of the just to compare from I'm in the opposite situation as Alex. I've seen more people play Skyrim and I haven't played it myself, but I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring, obviously. And just like the attitude of like your typical open world quest or just like side quests in general in most other games is like you're gonna have just to not necessarily to like artificially inflate the game like negatively, but it's just like a thing that games have where it's like most of the quests feel like, all right, go to this place, kill these guys, and then come back. That they raided my house, save my house, and then come back and tell me you did it, and then I'll give you like 7 like slices of salami or something. And there's really not like, I mean, there's only one thing that's kind of like that in Elden Ring, but it's like there's no like little baby like, oh, just do this and then I'll give you a thing for it. It's always like, oh, woe is me, what is this mystery? My father is over yonder, and then it's like, all right, well, sure, I guess I'll go over yonder, whatever that means. And then it's like there's multiple like it's never just like they don't try to like fill it with a bunch of like little things for you to do, which you would need a tracker for because that's probably how you would get like a bunch of items and materials and stuff. They don't do that. So that's the big difference for me, at least.
It's definitely, I think, fits in with a different style of game because like Skyrim and Oblivion are wish fulfillment games to a large degree of like this power fantasy, medieval fantasy world where you can own a house and populate it with your nice things. It's got the Animal Crossing. Oh yeah, the Animal Crossing satisfaction of collecting all your cool items, except this time they're swords that you killed dragons with, and that's pretty cool. It's a neat little fantasy, but it's not super compatible with the same thing that Elden Ring is designed around, which I think is important to, as a developer, know, because then you can go in and design the world that things are in a way that is correct for the game that you're doing, right?
Yes.
Especially because like Skyrim and Oblivion make a lot of uses of instances. You're in areas that are locked off from the open world all the time with loading screens. They don't really have a full level of attention to detail with the physical space inside matching the physical space outside. Like a lot of buildings in Skyrim especially are bigger on the inside. Which is fine.
Or you have those windows that always have light coming through them because it's always day even when you enter at night.
Yep.
Good.
And like things like that, I get why it bothers people, but I think they're lesser issues than a lot of people will make them out to be, as long as the game is designed around that. Especially because I'm imagining like the modding community, once you start complicating your game with mods, it becomes even harder to keep track of what's happening. And it really feels like I've played a couple of mods that do attempt to have the kind of Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne style of storytelling, which is like this very mysterious area where you have like very little direction. You just have to kind of figure out what to do in this dungeon. They all kind of have problems because Skyrim is not a game that is as finely balanced as something like Dark Souls and Elden Ring. So you run into this problem where if you need to then leave and come back, guess what? You're out of luck and your game's over. And you gotta load a prior save.
If you're looking for something that's just the atmosphere, then there's plenty of mods like that with like Clockwork and Dark End and
a lot of them are very contained, I think. There's a really cool one that I just did where you're in like this man who did the voice acting for this is incredible, but he does a very good Sheogorath voice, and you're in like a little mad realm Sheogorath manor, and you're just doing a couple of little dungeon clearing tasks there and fighting a few mini bosses, and it's a very cool Souls inspired take on it. But I did very much have the problem of wandering into that area, having no clue what's happening, and then having to load a prior save because it was way too hard and I couldn't do anything. Whereas with Elden Ring, you always know that you have a way out.
Yes.
You need it. I think they're different types of design that complement different games. All right, anything else you want to talk about with Elder Scrolls, Alex?
I think we hit on the things that I wanted to talk about.
All right. Time for Ghost of Tsushima. Good old map markers are back on the menu, boys.
Yes.
And this time we have wind.
We got wind.
We do have wind.
Look, I would take guiding wind as a replacement for a compass in literally every game. If I I think most games could use it very well. But it does definitely stand out with Tsushima.
Hopefully your father doesn't have to die in every instance of that for that to happen.
Your tragic backstory of the wind is your dad. And don't worry, if you haven't played Ghost of Tsushima, you learn about that in like the first 20 minutes.
That's not
opening cutscene.
It's the kind of thing where that was such a great way to incorporate elements of the kind of Breath of the Wild exploration design while still having map markers and still having these locations that are very separated, and it doesn't feel like as cohesive of a world, but it feels very fun to explore because you have all these cool zones kind of to interact with.
Yeah.
And it helps
that progression of unlocking those zones felt very satisfying to me as well, because it's just like if you had all of it just like completely open, especially with the way the difficulty scaling works in that game, it would just be I could see it be a little frustrating. But they have them like locked off, and they tie that progression to like gear that you get, which was very satisfying to me to like figure out, oh, I just got this new tool, now I can go over that wall.
Yeah, it almost feels very Batman-esque of going back to that Arkham Asylum style of Metroidvania like design where you have these tools that you unlock to get further in the world. But I think it's really fun.
You love.
That was it, Alex. I was just saying it was fun.
Yeah. You love a good hookling grappling hook.
Yeah, you do. You do love a good hookling grab. A good hook shot. I think Ghost of Tsushima really nailed that level of AAA open world design that appeals to a lot of people, because again, a lot of people like the Ubisoft open world design. It may not be us, but it's a lot of people. Yeah. And having a game that appeals to both us and those people is really nice, because then you get the kind of consensus between critics and audience of, this game's really good. It's easy to follow what's happening. I'm never super confused, but at the same time, the storytelling is great. You never feel like you're being held by the hand constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is a huge part of it comparatively, because, man, I went back and played some Horizon Zero Dawn. And I like Horizon Zero Dawn a lot. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think the open world is very well designed. A lot of fun things to do. But Aloy talks too much. There's a type of protagonist in open world games that will just kind of, it's the thing that all the Ubisoft protagonists do. They talk to themselves and like suggest things that you should be doing when you're near like a point to move on. And it's like Aloy will just stop and say, just jump across that ledge. I'm just like,
to be fair, every character you play to be fair, every character you play as in an Ubisoft open world game is clinically insane.
It's just the kind of thing where playing Elden Ring after playing those and going back to Breath of the Wild that doesn't do this, it becomes infuriating where the game is like constantly prodding you and being like, hey,
well,
did you realize there's a ledge here? And I'm like, yes, I see the ledge.
I see it.
I think I don't know if you guys. I believe there can be a balance between having this versus just a completely unvoiced protagonist.
They can have a balance for that, and it's have an option in the options menu to turn the character's voice off, and then you just don't have to.
Or see, I like saying she talks too much is a bad way of phrasing it, because I do like having a character that talks. Right.
Points out the obvious, would you say?
Yeah, it's like she is constantly holding the player by the hand and like dragging them along, and that infuriates me. It's the sort of thing where just I'll go through a like quote unquote dungeon, a little area with a bandit camp, and she'll just like constantly be narrating things that are happening, and I'm just like, this is too much to handle. It's a thing that JRPG characters do sometimes that's super annoying. And I'm curious as to why they went that route with the original Horizon. Because it gets less bad the further in you are, but it never goes away, which is interesting.
I feel like, for me, I feel like it's like the developers that decided to put that in, they don't have, whether they like believe it or not, they don't have like full trust in the player to figure it out themselves. Which is like you need when you're making a game or really anything that's going to be consumed by like a wider populace of people that aren't you, who knows exactly how things go in your head. Like you have to kind of treat it like all these people to a degree are stupid because I need to tell them how things work.
A lot of people are.
Yes, and it turns out, compared to the weird things that go on in your head that are going on in this game that you've crafted, a lot of people are, because it's not how things work in real life and it's not what they're used to. But there are better ways to like reach that understanding than just being like, okay, little baby, did you see that? Do you know the jump button? You can press that to get over that hole over there. And this item that you just got that came up with a big flashy golden logo on the screen and has a description like the other 50 items you got, you can read that and learn what to do. Did you know that? Oh, well, I better make sure that it's no. Shut up!
No,
I have a human brain.
I can't lead.
If you can't get that after a while, like I could understand, like at the beginning of the game or something for the first mission, and the rest is just like figure it out. If you have to like. If you need that for the entire game of like the game telling you like make sure that you do this over and over again, go play putt-putt or something, because it's so annoying and it's just bad design. I enjoy in games where the devs like appreciate that the people playing their games are intelligent people,
have the bare minimum of faith in your player base.
And it's like, I didn't figure this out. Oh well, I'll talk to someone about how to do it. I'm not what we have the whole internet. What am I going to be? I couldn't figure out how to do this, and I'm not going to look it up. It's just welcome to 2022, dude. Like it's not the end of the world if you can't figure something out. It's not a bad game all the time. If you can't figure something out, just get some help. It's okay.
Yeah, there's no shame in going to the internet for help. I think that it's a common problem. And now that I think back to it, The Witcher 3 did a lot of that too, for sure. But I think it was less noticeable there because Doug Cockle's voice is just gravel butter.
The comment to be I don't know if to be fair. The comment that I remember most Geralt making is looks like rain.
Yeah, he kind of
not really pointing out the.
He doesn't tell you what to do next, but he says place of power. He'll tell you if you're nearby something and don't know it. Which is I think that's where the balance lies. Is like, okay, I can have a thing that alerts me to a nearby thing, just don't make it constant and don't make it all the time. And for people playing Elden Ring right now, if you don't know where you should be going or how to find these hidden areas, I'm going to tell you right now. There's a little item that the game gives you that you can craft more of once you get the recipe, called the Grace Mimic. And what this little item does is it just points you to the nearest thing to do.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It might be specifically things that you haven't done yet, I think is the rule for it. But it will point to whatever the closest, not like main story thing, but whatever the closest thing to do in the world is that you haven't done.
That's cool. Craftable compass.
Yeah.
Yep, and it just points a little glowy line, and then you go follow that line, and guess what? You found something. So,
wow.
Neat.
It's the kind of thing, if you're having trouble, it exists. You just got to look out for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, be a little careful about what you're crafting and read items. Read the tutorial.
Learn how to read.
Yep. Reading comprehension is a basic skill that most people should have. So,
Start sweating.
Don't be afraid of a little bit of text. Yeah. I think same thing goes with a lot of Tsushima's design. Tsushima had the perfect solution to that, in that instead of having Jin talk to himself, you just have the wind constantly pushing you in a direction, which always felt natural. There was never a moment where the wind blowing towards something made me think, oh, I wish this game wasn't holding my hand.
Yeah.
Because it's very subtle and it just guides you in a way that is not intrusive and doesn't feel like you're being coddled, which I think is very important. Compared to the Ubisoft type of design that happens a lot.
It's also got, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, when we get to the Elden Ring specific discussion, but Tsushima especially has that thing where it's like, oh, I don't know where to go. What do you mean you don't know where to go? There's a lovely looking purple blue mountain over there with a thing on top that you can see in the orange glow of the sunset. Go there. You can climb and do cool parkour. Climb the thing. The whole entirety of Tsushima is just designed around climb the thing, because somewhere in our monkey brain there is some weird coagulation of neurons that goes, that tall. Me go top.
Go top.
Yeah. That is literally my favorite outdoor hobby. I'm going rock climbing in a few days.
Exactly.
I cannot tell you how many itch.io demos I've downloaded of weird games solely based on getting to the top of a tower. I have,
because it works.
And that is where getting over it absolutely trashed me.
God, getting over it, dude.
Yeah, very primal monkey brain thing that very few open world games get right. All right, we talked about Ghost of Tsushima, and consensus is we like it. On to Breath of the Wild. So, Brett, I know you, of the people that I know that have played Breath of the Wild, are the most negative on this game.
I don't like it at all.
Why don't you start us off here? So we have some points to work off of what didn't work for you.
I don't think, looking back on it and comparing it to Elden Ring, that I think just does a lot of, not the same, but similar things once you think about it. I can correct my past statements of saying that, just the way it does open worlds is boring or annoying. I think just its specific attitude and its specific world just did not work for me.
Yeah.
I think because there's
a lack of points of interest.
Yeah, seriously, there's points of interest that you can see, but they're all super far away, and the stuff in between them isn't interesting enough. And I'm not asking for your Ubisoft camps to raid or whatever, even though Tsushima did that very well because there wasn't 40 billion of them. But it's just more than just oh, I'm going to this place and I'm I've been traveling this direction for 20 minutes and now half of my swords are broken. And this rock came alive in the ground and just killed me in one hit.
Oh,
I guess I shouldn't go in that direction yet. Okay, sure. It's just after a while of that that unsatisfying trial and error where it was just it doesn't feel like I'm understanding the game more. It just feels like I'm just gonna pick a million wrong things to do until I go into the right straight line and then find a thing. That it was very unsatisfying to me.
I think
now.
Also.
The biggest thing for me that Breath of the Wild, being a Zelda game, has more of a reputation to uphold than a lot of other open world games, because I love some of the older Zelda games so much, and with the amount that Breath of the Wild has done for like the indie game scene, especially, and how many other AAA games have like taken little tidbits from it and used it as clear inspiration to the point where it's almost theft. It's like it just feels like we're not going to get one of those old Zelda games again, and that also has that contributes to my sour taste in my mouth that this is the replacement, and it's something that does a lot of things unsatisfyingly in my book.
Well, so the next Zelda game is Breath of the Wild 2, right? That's the next
the sequel to The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Is
Yeah.
how they continually build it. Yeah. I think my big thing now, Elden Ring has retroactively made Breath of the Wild less interesting to me. Though I definitely was a person that I've played Breath of the Wild through multiple times. I've enjoyed it a lot. I think the game does a lot of things really well. And I think compared to most other open world games, especially at the time, the sense of freedom that it had is astounding, right?
Yeah,
you really do.
That.
It's one of the few games that says, hey, you see that mountain? You can climb it. And you can. You can just go there and figure it out and climb it. Even if you're vastly underprepared, you can figure it out.
If you have enough stamina.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think what it really misses the mark with, in terms of like the Elden Ring comparison, shrines are boring. That's the first thing. The shrines are like 120 of them. Great. I like the little puzzles. But man, they needed like 3 or 4 different tile sets, because seeing that one gray slate sludge tile set over and over again really aggravated me, especially because every dungeon in the game is that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's never really an actual just cave, is there?
Not really. There's like 2 other dungeons that you do in the pseudo main story. I say main story, but you don't have to do either one of them. Hyrule Castle is basically a Dark Souls or an Elden Ring Legacy dungeon in the way that it's structured. It's a little bit less complicated than a lot of Elden Rings, but I think that is really what Breath of the Wild needed more of, is those types of locations that are maybe not interior, but have more around, more buildings to interact with, more things inside that are very like twisty and turny, because that worked so
a Zelda
well.
Dungeon.
Yeah, a Zelda dungeon. You know, the things that Zelda is known for.
Exactly.
I think it really
that
needed.
It threw away.
I didn't throw them away. It just like only had one, basically. And that was really, really disappointing, because by the time you get to that point of the game, especially if you're playing in the way that most people played, where you go around and do the 4 divine beasts first, you are so incredibly overprepared for that area that it is no longer a challenge. And that means it loses interest. The fact that weapons break and that your shields and whatnot break means you don't have a steady progression curve, right?
It's so annoying.
And that, I think, is the thing Breath of the Wild really missed out on, is when I kill a boss in Elden Ring, I know that I have made progress.
Yeah.
Distinctly, that I have eliminated that enemy from the world and can move on without getting attacked, and usually get like a cool weapon or something. When I kill a boss in Breath of the Wild and it drops a cool weapon, I don't use that weapon because it's going to break. And I just don't want to be disappointed by that. So I think it's the situation in Breath of the Wild where you just don't want to interact with a lot of the world. Not a lot of the world, but a lot of the enemies and whatnot. Because especially if you're playing on the harder difficulty, you hit a point where any fight you do is going to waste more resources than you gain, which is super frustrating. It's very not balanced in favor of the player.
It's diminishing returns the game.
Yeah. It's that thing where it's like whenever you get like an elixir in Final Fantasy, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to use these. I'm going to save them for something later. And then you always end up with like 20 of them at the end of the game that go completely unused because you just kept saying, I'm going to use this later when it's really needed, even though you didn't use them for the final boss. It's that, but it's like
too.
Yeah. A lot of RPGs, and it's not really a problem. It's more just like an attitude issue. Like they give you enough. It's just I don't want to use them because they're very good, and I don't want to waste them. But I had that same thought process for any like weapon that was slightly good in Breath of the Wild, where it's just like, oh, I'm going to save this for something later. I don't want to use it ever because I don't know what something later is yet.
Well, especially
and it's going to break forever.
Need them for most of the fights in the game.
Yeah.
And like they're not helpful enough to warrant breaking them, because you're always like, oh, if I get in like a bad situation, I want to use this. Except you never get in a bad situation, because once you get those weapons, you have enough powerful sub weapons.
I accidentally threw in Breath of the Wild, I accidentally threw one of those ancient blue glowy weapons off a cliff, and I never wanted to get one again.
Yeah,
That's called
It
littering,
was a
Alex.
plus, and it's gone. It's at the bottom of some ravine.
God.
Yeah, it also made the crafting feel pretty worthless because you could go like craft unique weapons up at the like refinery, the ancient material refinery, and you go do that, and then they break really quickly. And I'd be like very sad because I just spent all that time collecting the materials for this cool weapon, and they're useless now. What I really think Breath of the Wild needed, oddly enough, talking about a game that released like a couple days after Horizon. So Horizon has like the similar resource expenditure with having to craft all your ammo, right? It's a similar feeling that you get to Breath of the Wild's weapons breaking, except you actually buy the weapons and the weapons themselves don't break. Yeah. You just need to find the ammo for them.
Well,
and I think that works a lot better.
Yeah. I forget how it is in Breath of the Wild, but in Horizon, the ammo crafting is so fast. What is it, like a direction and one button, and
it's
you're
very quick.
Back full with arrows?
Because you craft arrows from the same menu that you equip weapons from, when you just do it by like holding the bumper down, which feels great. It's a very good system. With Breath of the Wild, you don't really craft arrows. You have to go find them, and that can get tedious to do after a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think it meant that arrows were often a reward that I would use because I found enough of them that it never felt like I would not find more. And you generally had like a place you could buy an infinite number, which I think worked very well. So I think that would have been a better system for a lot of the resource expenditures. Prioritize like the bow as like a power weapon or something, and having these arrows be the breakable thing, and then have regular weapons maybe not break, or if they do break a lot slower.
Yeah.
Because it becomes just tedious to interact with a lot of Breath of the Wild.
Even with the Witcher's weapon durability stuff, the weapons didn't break. You couldn't not use them. It was just a general thing of getting into the mindset of the Witcher, taking care of all your stuff, brewing those potions, preparing.
Yeah, and I think another good example is Dying Light. So Dying Light and Dying Light 2 both have breakable weapons. But you got to use those things a lot to break them, and generally you will never have an issue having enough weapons to be moving forward. But you do need to make the choice of, okay, I have enough stuff to craft one really powerful weapon that I can keep in my back pocket until I need it. And you'll have enough uses of it for it to be meaningful for a couple hours, most likely, but you will eventually lose it.
It's also so much more fun to use the grappling hook and just kick things.
Yeah, there's a very primal satisfaction with Dying Light.
You're telling me I can Scorpion get over here someone and then backflip over them?
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff in that game that I think is makes the weapon durability easier to stomach, especially because it takes like 4 to 5 times as long to break a weapon in that game as it does in Breath of the Wild, if not more so. Most of your weapons are going to last you at least like 20 minutes if you're using them heavily. So I think it's a very different balance of the same mechanic that works generally better.
Yeah.
It feels really bad in Breath of the Wild to take on like a White Lionel or something that is very hefty, and then by the time I'm done with the fight, I have like 2 weapons left that are both very bad.
Oh yeah, I've broken 3 at least while going up against those guys.
Yeah. It's just the thing I think it needed is some kind of feeling of distinctly, if not getting stronger, there needed to be an interesting thing to find everywhere. And it often had an issue where the interesting thing would be a weapon, and because the weapons were designed around breakability, they were then not nearly as interesting as they should have been.
So, no. Yeah. The interesting thing was leaf person poop.
The Korok seeds I actually think worked very well. I think they're a good mechanic because they're balanced around the idea that you're only ever going to get like a third of them, and they're just everywhere. Yeah. So you never really feel the need to collect all of them, and I think that worked very well. It's a nice little reward.
I got the statue.
Alex, you didn't have to do that. Man.
Yeah. I really didn't.
I say that, but I'm fully planning on beating Elden Ring like 6 times, just because I can. So really, not blaming you. All right. We talked about our other games. We were going to talk about Horizon Forbidden West, but the only person who's played it on this podcast is not here, so we'll talk about Horizon Forbidden West as soon as Wyatt is back at some point. For now, let's talk about Elden Ring, Brett. It's time to talk about Elden Ring.
Oh, baby, it's time.
And I gotta say,
Yes.
Elden Ring is one of the most refreshing open worlds because they just kind of assume that you as the player can figure out what to do at all times, which means you might have occasional moments of frustration, but then you'll stumble across a cave that turns out to be a massive dungeon that then turns into this crazy like mineral tunnel where you can go find smithing stones. And like everything has its use. There's so many different play styles that, like, depending on how you play, my first playthrough, I barely ever interacted with crafting because I didn't need to. I was playing a sorcerer. Who needs crafting if you're playing a sorcerer? Second playthrough, exactly. I'm going through as a dex-based like archer and dagger build and using as many crafted items as possible. And it is a vastly different experience because I'm actually engaging with crafting instead of spells, and I have a much more reason to gather those materials. But the game isn't telling me I was wrong for not using it the first time I played through, which is super refreshing.
You just have to figure it out. Yeah. There have been a couple times where it's like, oh man, this thing feels like really abrasive. It feels just like directly against the build I'm doing. Like what am I? And it's like, oh, I forgot I put the level into the thing that lets me throw lightning. I just have to remember that I can throw lightning at this guy, and then I win.
Yep.
So it's just you have to. It's more than any other game that I've played. Elden Ring commands you throughout, almost like the second that you're out of the open world and into like a dungeon, whether it's big or small, it's commanding you to use your entire arsenal that you have.
Yeah.
And usually in Dark Souls games, you can get pretty comfortable just having like, oh, well, I'm never gonna really need like a ranged thing unless I need to kite like a specific guy, so I'm just gonna keep like an unleveled bow around that's like really light, and I can just switch to that real fast and let an arrow fly off and get one guy out of the group or something. But in Elden Ring, it's like you need to you have put points into the thing that has let you hold that bow. That better be fully upgraded as far as it can if you want to use it, because you will have to, because you put points into that.
There will be points where those are drastically more useful than they should be.
Yes. Yeah. And it's satisfying in that regard, I think.
Yeah, they made sure that every build also has an option of using a bow. And I think a lot of the people complaining about certain enemies online are just stubborn and refuse to do anything but melee, which I get. Yeah. That was definitely me at some points in Dark Souls 3. But being able to use a bow, because there are bows that scale with strength, there are bows that scale with dexterity. There's like a cannon you can get that scales with something. I don't know what, because I haven't used it.
Ranged spells.
There's ranged spells. God, every single build you can do has a ranged option that you should have at least carried with you. So if you need it, you have access to it.
How does aiming and firing the bow feel compared to past Dark Souls games?
You don't aim.
Oh, sweet.
You can aim if you want to, but like, why would you?
I don't want to aim.
And like,
I'm using a bow.
The most frustrating thing at some points, if you're playing a bow build, is that you need to constantly have maxed out arrows. And doing that is very difficult, especially at the start of the game. So I think people wanting to go in and immediately play that type of build will have some barriers to what they're doing. Because it takes time to gather the materials to craft arrows, if you're crafting them. Buying arrows takes your souls, your runes, so you have less levels in the early game if you're using runes to buy them. So you have that additional level of resource expenditure when you're doing a fight, because you don't get those back when you kill something. And I think like the one adjustment I would probably have made to how arrow combat works in Elden Ring, especially because you have to use them more often than you otherwise would in Souls games, is having some way for bows to attack without having arrows. Maybe just like a basic arrow that does minimal damage, but you can fire off if you need to. Just so you have an option if you are spec'd into a bow build. Doesn't need to be ideal, but something that works. Because like, if you're using a short bow, it is incredibly satisfying to have the ability to jump, drop down, and then you can like jump and fire an arrow midair, and then as soon as the instant you hit the ground, you can fire another arrow like Legolas, right?
Ooh.
You get some crazy cool acrobatic bow stuff, but that just used 2 arrows.
Yes.
And you're constantly having that balance, which gives you then an incentive to explore the world, but it might be the wrong incentive.
Can you find arrows from defeating enemies, or is it something you have to craft or buy?
Yeah. You can find them,
but
you don't get enough back to reuse them constantly.
Yeah. You get things to craft them from most like overworld enemies as well. But again, it's not like a direct ratio of like I had
If
spent this much arrow, I get this much back kind of thing.
if there was a ring or something you could put on to scavenge like half the arrows you got back from shooting an enemy,
That would be a
would
cool talisman to have.
Yeah.
That'd be neat. I would also have loved. I would love to see arcane archery be a thing in Elden Ring at some point.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
being like a DLC spec of instead of shooting arrows, you shoot magic arrows out of FP, but with a regular bow. I would love that.
Yeah.
Just a cool.
Or like bleed arrows from your health pool or
Oh, that'd
something
be
like
cool.
that. That's a very Dark
Ooh,
Souls thing
yeah.
to have.
Absolutely. But there's a crafting tangent for Elden Ring. I want to talk more about the open world itself because I
Blood
went on the
rotted
crafting
enemies, yeah.
tangent because I wanted to mention that crafting in Elden Ring, while there is not a thing you have to interact with, and it is definitely not the primary motivation for exploring the world, unlike a lot of other games. It's not the Far Cry style. You need to collect these pelts to make your items type thing, unless you want to craft them. The world itself, I think, does the thing that Breath of the Wild did, where the world is beautiful, covered in interesting things to do, and you can look at a wall and go, I want to climb that wall, and 90% of the time you can. So I think that is like the key motivation for exploration here, is just the fact that there might be something on top of that bridge. So I want to go there, right?
Yeah.
And the thing with Elden Ring is that oftentimes those things can be like build defining.
Yeah, for sure. And if it's if it falls into the 10% that you can't get there by climbing, you'll probably find yourself somehow ending up there via teleporter later, like 90 hours
stumble
later.
your way there.
That being said, is it spoilery to ask this question? I mean, I don't think so.
Ask the question.
So you guys were talking about like there were these weird like stone pillar islands off in the distance in the sea. Did you guys get there in your playthroughs?
Yes.
You start the game there. That's the tutorial island.
Oh,
I didn't realize that, but you do.
Yeah, that's where you start the game. Yeah, you if you can see a landmass, you generally can visit the landmass. There's a few things in like the far distance that are set dressing, but it's usually pretty clear that they're set dressing and not interactable because be like there's crashed shipwrecks that don't have anything you could stand on far off in the distance. So that's an area you're not going to.
And you can't swim.
No.
I mean, in heavy armor, who's gonna swim? Who's got time for that?
Me, the all strength build.
But yeah, I think the real shining star of Elden Ring is that you can spend like 30 hours in the starting area and have plenty to do.
Yeah.
And then you can repeat that with every new area that happens if you would like to.
Sometimes for more time because the areas are sometimes twice as big.
Oh god.
And then you go, "Oh man, that's crazy. I just got a new area. There's supposed to be 4 legacy dungeons or whatever according to the advertising. I'm probably pretty close to finishing the map. And then the map gets like 10 times bigger within the next like couple days of playing. And it's just like Ryan and I kept talking back and forth every time this happened to us, and it's just like every time a new area was discovered or we just got teleported across the map and it was like, oh, this must be like the eastern or northern limit. And then like 60 hours later, the northern limit goes even further up. And it's like, what?
The level of satisfaction that I got for finding the full map was immense. There was no other game that's like that. Because when you start, you can't zoom out far enough, right? That's the thing that they really do to give you that sense of expansion is when you start, you can see the starter area of the map. Then you'll find a map fragment that'll expand your map a little bit. If you go exploring on foot and don't find map fragments, the map will expand as you explore. But there is no way you're seeing that full thing until like 50 hours minimum.
Yeah, at least.
If you're going very fast. Not to mention the underground. I think like one thing that this to me was never a thing that was advertised. I think it's really a huge selling point. I'm not going to spoil any of what's in there because the underground areas are all amazing. But just know there are like a solid 4 or 5 additional regions worth of content that just isn't on your map because it's not above ground. The kind of thing that like you eventually get a toggle button between the underground and the above ground because there's so much stuff to do underground.
Oh god.
Right.
And
it's so much stuff.
It's the best too because if you don't go down a specific quest line, no one will tell you to go there ever. So you can just like stumble upon it just like way
Yep.
before or way after you're supposed to go there. And it's just like, especially if you do it before and it's like super early in the game, you still have that sense of I don't know what's ahead yet, and then you end up going down a random elevator for like 6 actual minutes, and you get to the bottom, and it just looks like you're in a completely different game. It's mind blowing. I
Yep.
don't think I've ever had an experience like that in any game before, where it's just like the a completely different world. You just get thrown and it's like, I don't know, you can go here later or now if you want, if you're crazy. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
pretty
it
cool,
does
I
a much better
guess.
job with Breath of the Wild. I think you generally had a good idea of what to expect in every area you went to because so much
Hmm.
of it was overground and on land and visible from far away. Whereas with Elden Ring, it does such a good job of kind of wrapping the different areas of the map together in a way that you'll hit a ridge and then suddenly see this brand new area and go like, "Oh man, there's so much to do." And you'll see like a
Yeah.
castle on a cliffside and go, "Man, I want to go there."
Ooh.
And that happened like 10 times where I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I need to know what's in this building. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, I can't get up there now. How am I going to get up there? And then like 10
Oh,
hours
yeah.
later, you'll discover a quest line that you missed in the first area that will then unlock the ability to go to that new area. And it's just so constantly expanding in ways that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
And that gives like a sense of progression that isn't actually related to player power that I think is really, really valuable to have. Yeah. Not to
Oh.
mention, we talked about Halo Infinite's campaign. We did a Halo Infinite campaign Gamescast.
Oh.
And a lot of us, I think we all enjoyed the campaign, but there was one thing about it that Brett and I specifically were real rough on, which is the open world.
Yes.
And the big issue in that is that there's one biome, right? There's one
Hmm.
type of space that you're going to see in the open world. In Elden Ring, I kept getting constantly astounded by the different areas because you'll go in one region of the map and it will just look like a different game all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that happens like 15 times. It's just a
At
level of
least.
difference that, yeah, at minimum. It's the
Because
kind of
then
thing
there's
where
like
there's
it.
such a visual identity to every area.
Yeah. And then
Ooh.
every area looks different, whether it's day or nighttime or sunrise or it's foggy out or there's rain or there's like some areas that just have
Yeah.
lightning shooting down constantly. That there's like it legitimately feels like, because I'll admit I'm a poser. I just follow a bunch of accounts on Instagram that post like paintings from the 1800s that I think look very nice. It looks like the art designers for Elden Ring just looked at just like a bunch of those and was just like, oh, I want to make a place that looks like that and one that looks like this and one that looks like this, and then they just did.
And then
And there's no
they
like,
put paintings of them in the game that you can then look
yes,
at and then find hidden items if you find where the painting was taken from.
yes,
Oh.
it's
It's great.
super cool.
Oh, I love that
They're
kind of exploration.
the amount of times
Those
that I just
puzzles.
had to like willingly just stop playing and just like they knew this vista was going to be beautiful, so they put like a wonderful camera angle of you like going and it's just a wide expanse of like blue and
Yeah.
yellow or something like that. You just have to put your controller down and just be like, how is this in a
And
game?
the
Because I
reason
know I'm
you
not just
know
looking.
they knew they were doing this is they, unlike Dark Souls, no enemies there. They just
Hmm.
plop you out in a little space with no enemies, completely safe. Then you wander out and just look at it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Super. It's the sheer level of confidence that is in the construction of the Elden Ring's open world is astounding.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's the type of thing that is missing from a lot of open worlds. I think the thing that I played that most recently had a similar feeling was Red Dead 2, where Red Dead 2
Mm.
has it's a very different kind of world because it has to constrain to real life, right? It can't have the like impossible vistas that a lot of Souls and Elden Ring style games have, but instead it relies on using real like natural beauty in a way that is so rare to find in video games. Just
Hmm.
because like the level of graphical fidelity in Red Dead 2 allows you to do that, right? Where if Elden Ring was just like realistic vistas, I think it would look far less interesting just because
For sure, yeah.
the level of technical detail is definitely good enough, but it is not to the level of something like Red Dead, which I think is a very different type of satisfaction from seeing them. So it's a similar feeling to that, despite being a completely different type of open world.
Yeah. Which I think it bears saying now that if you are one of those people that made the art team at FromSoft anxious that their game wasn't going to look good enough, then you should join the people playing Putt Putt right now that I mentioned
use your
before,
eyes.
because you are wrong.
Wait, who made them feel that they're
There
what?
was a period of time where like a couple teaser trailers came out, and for some reason it was trendy to be like, "Oh, this game looks like worse than Dark Souls 3." It's like there were people just like dunking
Especially
on
because
how
Demon
bad
Souls
they
had
thought the
just
game
come out.
looked.
The Demon Souls Bluepoint
Yeah,
remake came out, and I mean, it's hard to argue that Demon Souls doesn't look better than Elden Ring. At the
but it's a
same
different kind of
time,
art design.
yeah, and it's not open world. The Demon Souls
Yeah,
levels are very
exactly.
contained, so very different type of thing.
Yeah, and in interviews, Miyazaki was mentioning that members of the art team, and him included, were very anxious about people not liking the way the game will look after how they worked so hard on it.
Yeah,
So I hope they don't feel that way anymore, because they really shouldn't.
yeah,
They
it's
kind of made like
beautiful.
the best looking world, I think, in any game ever. It's safe to say, at least for me, it is at the top of
Yeah,
the prettiest looking world for sure.
I talk about Final Fantasy 14 a lot, and I think Final Fantasy 14 is the only game I've played that consistently has areas with the same level of visual just difference and
Hmm.
inspiration behind them. Of like the final area of Endwalker gave me the exact same feeling as when I was riding down that elevator that Brett mentioned earlier, and you see
Oh,
one of the underground areas, and are like, "This is breathtaking."
Hmm.
Absolutely. Like, there's very few games that I think can be in that upper echelon of open world design, uh, and Elden Ring is definitely one of them. So I think it's just so refreshing to play a game like this that doesn't prod you to go in a specific direction. There's nothing telling you that you have to do something. One of my experiments on having beaten the game now, I'm loading New Game Plus on that character. I'm deciding I want to see how long I can go with just out interacting if any of the main story stuff. But just
Yeah,
like don't do the legacy dungeons and go
yeah.
explore the
'Cause
entire world. How far can I get
there's
before I
secret
have to do
paths
one of
around
those?
most of them. It's
Yeah,
really interesting.
so I'm curious to see how far I can get doing that. And I think it's a very interesting way to have constructed the game. That like the first time I played, I stumbled across the way to just skip the first legacy dungeon.
oh,
You can just skip it.
Yeah,
And it's the kind of I think that's part of the freedom of the game where you don't have difficulty options, but you really have a way to kind of choose what you're doing at a specific time and if you are ready for a certain area. And there's almost always a way to just go, okay, I'm gonna go do something else for a little while. I'm gonna go level up, and like there's people posting farming spots online and stuff. If you gotta use those, there's no shame, right?
they're
Elden
there.
Ring, Dark Souls games are gonna throw everything they've got at you, so might as well break them as
Exactly.
much as
Yeah.
possible. FromSoft generally thinks of that when you're doing it, so
Hmm.
the kind of game where I think that level of trust in the player is so rare.
Yeah.
And they trust that, hey, if you stumble into an area and you're going to get consistently killed over and over by the first enemy that you see, maybe you shouldn't be there. But hey, you
Yeah.
can make the decision if you want to keep going. So
But now, because of that I at least we both agree, very obvious design decision. If you choose to keep doing that, that is your fault
yeah,
now,
whatever
because
happens at
you
that
can
point
go.
is on you.
Exactly. Yeah. Any time that I've found myself just like banging my head against something for a while, it's like it's always this inner like conflict between the Dark Souls, like, well, this is the thing that I have to do. It has the big health bar going across the bottom of the screen. I gotta kill it. I don't know what I'm doing. But then there's the new Elden Ring thing where it's just like, yeah, but there's this cave that I found before that'll probably give me a rock that I could put on my sword that's gonna help me do more damage. So why don't I just
Yeah,
do that instead? And then I can go do that instead, and then come back and probably end up beating the thing on that first try back now. It's
yeah,
it's super satisfying, and it feels like, because again, there's nothing telling you like, oh, if you do not feel comfortable enough fighting this boss, be sure to explore it. There's no like little like Navi or like NPC like before every boss telling you to like go like screw off somewhere if you can't defeat it. It's no, it's just like, oh wow, this is really hard, And I could, one of my friends who's better at the game could probably do this with this build that they're doing, but they designed this game to be played by a lot more people than your normal Dark Souls game. So I could go somewhere else and do something way easier and then make retroactively the thing I was having trouble on way easier as a result.
Yep.
And it's so satisfying to feel like you just figured that out. Like, oh, I can't do it now, but I'll come back more powerful than you could ever imagine, kind of thing. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. It feels very Doctor Strange. You just keep coming back eventually and like return far stronger every time. So I think it's a very interesting way to do the game. And I like that. I was iffy at first because this game does have some repeated like mini bosses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of them are utilized super well in that they'll show that you kill this huge boss in the first area that's super hard. And you'll see him like 20 levels later, 30 levels later, and go kill him and realize, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I see what they're doing. You'll find like a boss that's one of the first cave bosses you find that's just a regular enemy somewhere, and you're like, oh, I get this now. I understand the strength increase that has happened. That's one of the things you get from the world not being like scaled to the player's difficulty level. It's just a really, really good sense of progression and powering up in Elden Ring.
One of the few times I felt good in Dark Souls was when I saw the gargoyle again after the church fight, and I'm just like, you're mine.
Yeah.
Going down.
Because that was long enough ago where it's just like, yeah, I don't even care that he's a normal enemy now. I know this boy.
And then, of course, there's still the secret bosses hidden away that, if you aren't doing everything you can to kill them, are going to be so impossibly hard that you will throw your controller. So
will cry.
You better be sure you're ready to attempt those.
Mm-hmm.
But they are very good. I think this game has like some of the best boss designs of any game, period. Yeah. Especially compared to some of the older Souls games.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Anything else you want to bring attention to, Brett, with open world?
Well, because we've talked about this between ourselves before, but there's no hang glider, there's no grappling hook. It's you are a boy and his double jump horse.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fancy yourself Skyrimming up some mountains, then you have now found a game to play that isn't Skyrim because that is good up things.
Yep.
It's traveling on horseback across the world is like whenever until the map gets really big and it's just like asking a lot because there's so much in between point A and point B. For a while, it's just like I don't want to fast travel. It's too much fun, and if I fast travel between these two places, I'm gonna miss. Exactly, I'm gonna miss like 17 caves in between this like one whole area that I'm going across, or something like that, or like a nighttime only encounter that I will have missed if I wasn't riding across this specific field at this specific point at night. And like just riding across areas and just like occasionally, just like holding your halberd out off the side to just kill like 5 guys in a row when they just line up for you on the side of your horse is very, very just super satisfying. And that's where it gets me a lot of Shadow of the Colossus vibes, where riding aggro around the world and that same level of mystique and built for horseness, it feels very very similar to how Elden Ring does.
Reminds me that I wanted to mention I have never seen a game that utilizes a jump button so perfectly as Elden Ring. Because it's the kind of thing you don't think about until you encounter this, where every level in this game is designed around you having access to a jump button in a way that other games are just afraid to do. I think the closest comparison I can get is in Halo levels when you're trying to find hidden skulls. That's like the most similar thing to me. Because every level, you'll see like a thing that you go, it looks like I might be able to jump to that. And then you do, and you find a whole other route around this area that takes you like a hidden boss or something, or to a secret item hidden away. And it's so engaging of having this ability to like, it makes it feel like jumping is an innovation.
Yes, it does.
A stupid sentence to say, but so few games actually utilize the fact that you can jump to do anything in the level design that it makes such a difference that it's here.
Because a lot of the games that have that platforming element, it's either like a platformer or that platforming element is like marked by like little like yellow or white like lines on rocks. Like
Yeah.
this is the route that you're supposed to climb up. How do you climb up this route? That's the puzzle. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But never before have I seen a game where it's just like, yeah, this whole castle, you'll notice that it's a building, and buildings have roofs on top of them. What if you could jump across literally all of them, and there were things hidden across the entire top of the castle? And it feels like you're like QA testing and like trying to no clip out of the map because
Yep.
you're like mushing yourself against rocks and really
Trying not to fall
small
to your
ledges.
death.
It's super stressful, but it's super cool because you know you can make that jump. You just have to like just get there and try to finagle it. It's really satisfying, and there's nothing telling you that you can. It's just like, huh, there's a glowy thing over there. There's not a staircase that goes up to that. It's just like 80 feet above the rest of the castle. I just kind of have to
Can
just hop
you
there.
Figure it out.
can you shoot objects with a bow and interact with them, like shooting object or shooting items off of a thing at all?
Generally not, but
No.
occasionally yes is the
Yeah, it
answer.
depends on the thing.
Huh.
You can do things like if something's hanging by a rope, you can usually shoot the rope. That's
Yeah.
typically the way that works. Or there are certain things in like dungeons where you can shoot like things that spew fire at you and make them vanish underground. So you don't have to deal with it, which is neat. But yeah, it's usually limited to minor things. I just think the way that they utilize that level design is so interesting because a lot of games that have open worlds kind of just forget to create a world that has the level design of a regular game in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll often be that like, okay, you'll find a camp that has cool design in that one camp, but it's rarely the case that the entire world is designed as like one massive level. And that is, to me, is what Elden Ring does right, is that the entire world feels like one gigantic Dark Souls level that's constantly folding back in on itself. There are shortcuts between entire different regions that you'll find. So it just has that same sense of discovery that I think is limited mostly to Metroidvanias. It's the type of thing where if you go back and play Metroid Dread is very similar. Well, you'll find, I think that game has a very similar joy of exploration as Elden Ring does, despite being a very different type of game. So
I agree, yeah.
It's just rare to see that. All right. With that, I think we've talked about everything. Don't worry, the Elden Ring talk will continue.
Very soon.
As soon as
You cannot
we're both
stop it.
confident enough of it that we've seen enough of the game to fully discuss it, and of course have both beaten it and everything.
I need to finish it first.
Yeah, we'll have a big. That's going to be a lengthy Games Club.
3 hours at least.
There's going to be a lot to say about Elden Ring when we get there, but that's coming. We'll probably talk about Horizon's open world a little bit next episode when Wyatt is back. All right. That said, it's time for shoutouts.
Oh my
I think
God,
we do.
those.
Yeah, we do them. We knew it last week
so
because last week is weird. It was a special episode.
Yes. It's been a while.
But this week is shoutouts time. And look, I think I know what at least my shoutout is.
Yes.
I don't know if it's also the shoutout of you two.
Yeah.
Save us the effort.
We did a movie night the other night, and we watched, out of a random recommendation I saw somewhere, someone had recommended to watch Jet Li's The One. This movie
From 2001.
From 2001. It's on Netflix. It is clearly like the name is inspired by The Matrix and everything. It is one of the most ridiculously entertaining things I've ever watched. Not a great movie, right? Don't go expecting this to be high art, but do expect to go into it and watch a couple of action scenes to nu metal, specifically get down with the sickness.
Oh, wow.
That make you laugh the entire time. And of course, it's good choreography because it's Jet Li. So
yeah,
my face is not hurt from laughing in quite some time, and that
movie surpassed every expectation
numb.
that I had. And it is one of the only movies I've ever seen that has like a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, where I think everyone who watched it and rated it poorly had no clue what they were doing.
Yeah.
This is not a movie to be taken seriously.
Either that or they were watching it alone.
Yeah.
Oh, perhaps. Yeah.
Maybe the bad CG was less tolerable in 2001, but at least in 2022, it's very funny. So
bad CG. Those people were getting ripped apart. You could see it.
It was
atom by atom.
All right. So with that, As always, podcasts are Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m. Eastern Time on the podcast platform of your choice. Twitch, YouTube, all of them. We got them all. That's it. We did it.
Oh no, I'm going to the Hades universe!
The Stygian penal colony in the Hades universe, Alex.
Oh my god. He's gonna fight people on top of a ziggurat again.